Welcome everybody to AB Live. So good that everyone is here and everybody is arriving to the chat room. And for those of you here, that we have a very special show, as one of the themes of the show is always trying to understand the intersection of the mind and technology, the realms of Hermes, as I like to say, because the god of innovation, but also the god of intellect and reasoning. And we need to understand Hermes more than ever these days as we become overwhelmed, fragmented, and somewhat lost in these digital domains. And very excited that our guest tonight knows about these subjects and so much more. And that is Nichol Bradford. Nicole, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Pleasure's all ours. And with us too, we have the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, holding this space of fun and deeply weird.
That's all the best you can do. And wonderful. And for those of you who are showing up at the chat, I'm sure you know the drill. If you have questions for Nicole, please write down in lots of question marks or caps. Those of you who do super chats, you will get moved up the ladder. And as always, this will be available. We are live now, but it will be available on YouTube right after. And in a few days, I will put in all our streaming podcast channels, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all that good stuff. So no surprises for this AB Live. And again, seeing the chat room starting to fill up, so it should be an exciting time. So Nicole, how did you become interested in these subjects of technology and the mind? I mean, I think watching your videos, I loved them. I love your work, and I was so excited. You were a executive for Blizzard, weren't you? I mean,
yes.
I keep thinking, I am, StarCraft. I kept going. I am Team Kerrigan, Queen of Blades all around. One of my favorite, anti-heroes of all times.
Right.
And
go on.
No, I was gonna say, how did you go into Blizzard, or have you always been interested in this sort of intersection of technology and health?
Well, I mean, basically what happened is that I was in video games and I loved video games, and I
Did we lose Nicole? Oh. No, oh my God, I've lost Vance. Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you, Vance.
Well, if I took myself off mute, you could.
Yeah. But oh no, we lost Nicole.
No.
Hopefully she'll jump back. Those Archons strike at every moment. They're relentless, very much like Robert Bonomo. So device not connected. Let's see if we can get her back. She's gone. Hopefully she'll jump back in a second.
In World of Warcraft shot her out.
Well, I used to play a lot of StarCraft. I played the original Warcraft, but I never played World of Warcraft. My son from a previous marriage, he was very much into it. So, hello, you're back.
Okay.
I lost you.
Yeah, so I got into video games because I saw it as the next evolution in human storytelling. And so I had a really positive association with video games and with technology. And then when I was in China, I had a break between assignments as I was moving from one role to the next. And so in that break, I went on a meditation retreat and had a really powerful experience. I had a profound experience, and that got me really excited and interested in psychology and neuroscience and the human mind. And because I had such a positive association with tech, I thought it would be natural that you would combine technology and supporting the human mind.
And you said, as you've spoken about it, you were in a meditation retreat. What was this experience like? I mean, you
Yeah,
said
I was on.
overwhelming and insight. I mean,
Mhm.
what were some of the revelations you got?
I was in a Vipassana meditation retreat, and I think one of the reasons why it was so profound for me is I was, I was very heady before. I'm an Enneagram 7, so super heady. And, Vipassana is a kinesthetic um, technique. You take the mind through the body. And so I think that really just, being forced to spend 10 days in my body really had a big balancing effect. And so by the last 3 days of that retreat, I was, basically, feeling, you know, connection and love and happiness and basically sort of like the universe inside my body. And on the other side of that, I was like, I want everybody to have this. And then because I had such a positive association with tech, I thought it's natural for these things to be combined. And then after that, I moved to the United States and moved to San Francisco, which is sort of where you go for the intersection of tech and consciousness, and co-founded the Transformative Technology Lab. That was 7 years ago. We just had our seventh conference. And the last one in, when people could still gather in 2020, had over 1,000 people. And, we exist to catalyze the health, happiness, and fullest potential of every human. And we do it by supporting the founders, innovators, and investors in connecting with one another to create the types of technologies that can support the.
Did the Archon strike again?
I think so.
This continues. What shall we do? Especially, it's always very interesting parts. Interesting. And I was going to ask her. Oh, I have my questions here. So we'll have to wait till Nicole gets on it. Sorry about that, viewers. Hopefully she'll get on it. I mean, she is in San Francisco. You would think that better internet. Oh, yeah. What are you going to do? Maybe maybe Elon Musk is turning off things or something. Bill Gates. So that's
Hi there.
there you go. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I changed cameras, and let's see if somehow that makes it better.
Yeah, sometimes could be the internet. It could be the camera. Maybe just going off without the camera.
I think there you go.
So we can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
we can hear you fine.
Okay, let's try that so we don't end up, going back and forth, and this might actually work.
Yeah, maybe sometimes the video just takes up so much bandwidth it collapses it, so it wouldn't be the first part.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time. So, well, wonderful. Yeah. So, yeah, congratulations on the anniversary of your group. And here's a question for you in your experience with video gaming and certainly things like World of Warcraft, where the human persona gets stretched out. My son played it for years, and also in technology, I've been. I watched this documentary recently. I can't get you out of my head. With Adam Curtis, and he's trying to find out about the authentic individual today. And is it possible that perhaps there is no authentic individual? We're just a whole bunch of different personas and complexes. I know I'm getting very Jungian, but what do you think, Nicole? Do you think there is an authentic persona, or person, an authentic self, or do you think it's something that sort of just gets created as we go along, and in this day and age with social media and technology just gets fragmented in different places? What is your views on this? Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of to answer that question, it's really about how meta do you want to go, right? I mean, Moondog has an onk, so it's probably pretty meta. Um,
That's Miguel's too. We share that onk there. That's the
oh,
we invite
okay.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other day I was on a podcast and someone asked me, who is Nicole? And I had just finished reading Rumi. So my
Mm.
answer was a soul observing a soul observing a soul. And but it was like a regular business tech podcast. So he was
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay. And I was like, and also this as well. So, on the sort of the meta level, is there, we have a lot of personas, we have a lot of states. It depends on which system you're talking about. For any of these, how is it that we become? Who do we become? Um, you know, who are we really? Is that we that we think we are actually real? What are we beneath the identity? What are we beneath the personas? What are we beneath the labels when we get to the sort of the vast ocean awareness? Who are we then? Um, and so there's that whole area as well, just around consciousness. My co-founder with TransTech is the person who has studied consciousness formally. Have you interviewed Jeffrey Martin before?
No, I have not.
Oh, you might find his work very, very interesting. It's basically he has done a probably the most comprehensive study on people who are experiencing um, non-dual states and
Mhm.
and states of a variety of different labels. There's like 212 different um, terminologies that the religions, philosophies around the world use for, the mm, expanded states of consciousness, enlightenment, awakening,
Right.
non-duality, God consciousness, a variety of different things. And so he's actually studied those people and identified four major locations
Mhm.
of mind, um, or non-dual mind. Um, and it's a really fascinating research study. It's called and the course that he developed, and actually we developed together in the beginning on to help identify additional people, um, and also to create the conditions for people to make these shifts, is called the Finders course. And there's a book on Amazon called The Finders, which describes all of the different states and locations. Um, but that's sort of like the deep academic side of consciousness, and fundamental well-being. And so the way that fundamental well-being and transformative technology fit together is that, I came into all of this actually through meditation because of my experience in Japan.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, before I came back to the US, I also went and spent 33 days in Myanmar with the Mahasi Sayadaw
Mm.
in the jungle meditating. And so I was deeply interested in consciousness and mind and technology. Well, consciousness and mind, but then also as I got into it, I'm a middle class kid, or one of the labels that this sleeve has is a middle class kid from Houston, Texas. And so I have a strong sort of aspiration around everyone having access to all of the good stuff, for them to decide for themselves what is for them. Um, and so, because of that, I leaned more towards technology for to support people with stress, anxiety, depression, happiness, loneliness, connection, engagement, meaning, purpose, skills, to social and emotionally skilled people, so that you could essentially raise the floor, because the rationale for why everyone can't have a Montessori education is resources. But technology is the thing that makes what's scarce abundant. And so, if you can find all of these different tools and ways of advancing the human condition psychologically, then, at some point, people reach the place where, beyond self actualization is transcendence. Um, and many people don't know that there was actually another layer on Maslow's hierarchy, um, of transcendence, when you self transcendence, when you realize at the point that that self that you have actualized, you no longer need. Um, and so that's how fundamental well-being, or what you've sort of talked about or hinted at, of a soul observing a soul observing a soul, and who are
Mm.
we really? That's how it actually fits to and aligns up against this really tech informed world, where we're all trying to figure out what's up, what's down.
Well said. Yeah, and I was reading some Plotinus today, and what Rumi said, and Plotinus was basically, we're news watching news, but at some point we reach that to touch the one, as you were talking about non-dual. There cannot be any self. There cannot be any eternity. It's a place that's beyond description. But
Mm,
he said, as human beings, we all have access to it at some point. It's not something that can be crazy, or we have to wait a few eternities to develop. So I think you might have experienced something very similar to that. In what part of Houston did you live? I lived in the Montrose when I lived there, and Houston's
okay.
a great place if you have a car.
I grew up on the northwest side of town by Antoine and 290. I went
Mm-hmm.
to Eisenhower, and
Mm-hmm.
then for college I went to the University of Houston.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I went to University of St. Thomas, so
Ah, okay.
good school.
Excellent. I know exactly where that's at.
Yeah, near Rice University. So awesome, awesome. And I think you make a good point, because in one of your talks, Nicole, you actually said, uh, and don't quote me, I'm going to get here as close as possible. You said the amount of mental health workers or professionals is not going to match the amount of depressed people. In other words, we can't scale the humans' ability to reach people who are suffering from depression right now or in the future. I think
Mm,
yeah, I think here it is. For too few therapists and too many suffering from depression. Depression alone will be the single largest disease burden by 2030. Whoa.
mhm. Yeah, and actually, someone just sent me an article that Japan has established a minister of loneliness,
Mm.
because their suicide rate has gone up to be the highest it's been since their last economic, um, since their last economic issues. And so, sort of the net of it is, one of the things with technology that I'm a big believer in is, how do we give the therapists that are there superpowers? And so, the ability to support more people, the ability, and not in a factory kind of way. If you talk to any therapist, one of the things that they will tell you is the first several sessions, the person is trying to get them to like them. So it takes a while to get to what really happened. And then additionally, one of the things that many people do not know when they're looking at, the numbers is, the percentage of people who go to a um, a first session and never go back again is really high. And part of it is that they don't feel like, they don't feel like the like therapy will work for them. And a big bunch of that has to do with, I think, chemistry and matching, between the therapist and the person. Because right now you get assigned to a therapist based on your zip code, on
Right.
your plan, and the first one you can get into. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the person, that will, allow you, or that the person that you'll have the kind of chemistry and trust with to actually get, to get support for the issue that you need to speak to them about. And so, my theory of, technology and these softer human issues is not absolutely not about replacing people. And actually, many of the products that have, um, that have shown the greatest success are the ones where humans are absolutely in the loop. Humans are absolutely a part of the process, that human connection, whether it's with a human therapist or with a group or something like that. And so it's really not about that. It's how do you use the technology to um, help people ensure that people have access and are ready for the moment when they're with the human, and help them with integration. Because any sort of growth and development, on the back end, whether it's a powerful experience or a therapeutic experience, it's the meaning that you make of it afterwards and the integration that you do that allows it to be, not just a revelation, but, an actual change.
Love it. That makes perfect sense. As somebody who's been had a lot of therapy in my career. Yeah, the fact that if I can honestly look at my life, and there was one or two therapists that I just immediately connected with. We just had it was perfect chemistry. He or she signed to me. I was able to speak to them. So the ability to get matched up as soon as possible definitely saves a lot of time, and you can definitely grow even more. And for you're talking about Japan, as I read, I think suicides per month in Japan are more than the entire year of the pandemic of lives lost. And obviously, you see depression, anxiety, addiction is probably only going to get worse with the last year we've had.
Yeah, it's I think so. But it's also, the other thing that has happened during this time, during COVID, has also been a big reset of people, thinking about what really matters to them, and what's important. And also what this time has done is, I would say, I think it's a probably good, um, I think it's probably fair to say that there isn't anyone in the world who doesn't know someone or has personally experienced, um, a bit of struggle over the last year. And so, what used to be over there and someone else's problem is actually now all of our problems. It's either us or someone we know has been challenged in the last year with all of the conditions.
Yeah, and even as you also in one of your talks, you said uh, even let's just not take what happened in 2020. We take that off the table. Stress levels are shooting up, and unpaid medical bills are the number one cause of personal bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And we could blame, there's plenty of people to blame about our healthcare, but technology can really help this, can it?
Well, I mean, I think that, what technology allows is it helps with, accessibility and affordability and discovery. So a good example would be with the, meditation apps. Many of the meditation apps have really made meditation accessible. If you can remember before the meditation apps, it actually was kind of hard and very expensive, to do a meditation retreat because, for example, you know, the bulk of the people of the world work, and they work every single day.
Hmm.
And so even if a retreat is free, that does not make it inexpensive because that person who is sitting is not working, and most of the people of the world have to work at least 5 days a week, but almost every day. And so what these apps have done, whether or not they're the same, I don't think it's the same as being with a teacher, of course. But it's made it a great deal more accessible. It's made it, accessible to people who never thought to do it, but who during the pandemic reached for it. Fitbit, did released a study where they saw a 3,000% increase in meditation
Wow.
last year. Or actually that was in like a single month. Because
Wow.
people were like, I need something.
So,
I
I got
need something, and then that something is something that sticks with you. And, meditation is quote unquote a gateway drug for a lot of, growth and development and understanding of self and connection to others.
Yeah, well, God, Headspace must be very happy. That's the one I've used. So
What do you think about it?
that's okay. I mean, meditation, standard meditation is not for me. I have other ways of meditating. I do,
How do
for
you
example,
meditate? Yeah,
I
let's go back and forth. How do you
let's go
meditate?
back.
Tell
How
me,
do
go.
I think everybody meditates one way or another. I'll do that, but I do walking meditation in the trails. I do biking and I do yoga. I guess when I'm in yoga, I am meditating. So that's the problem is when you tell me meditating, I think of the man sitting on the mountain. But yes, those are my forms of meditation. But and I do a lot of dream work, uh,
Mm.
automatic writing. So whenever I'm really in a bad place, I've done self hypnotism, which I feel is sort of the Western form of meditation. Good apps for it. So yeah, that's how I do it.
And what about you, Moondog?
Well, in the mornings, usually after I wake up, I meditate. Um, various thoughts cross my mind. I let them go. This one's going, this one's going, that one's going, and so forth. Just pretty much the standard thing. Close your eyes, be inactive. Also, walking. I go out and walking in my backyard, and I just try to keep the chatter in my mind from going. And I just try to relax and again get into a special state. It's
Yeah.
about that's about how I'd say it. Sometimes it even strikes me if I'm at work, I telecommute, I'll be sitting there and I'll be thinking, I'll be lost in thought, and all of a sudden I'll slip into a meditative state, and then sometimes a dream from previous night will come to me. And so then I know I'm in that kind of I'm in that kind of state. That's about it's a good description of what happens.
Yeah, the I think over the next decade, I think you're going to see dream work becoming really advanced actually. There was an article that just came out a couple of days ago, and it was on basically people who are fully asleep being able to communicate to
Mhm.
the researchers in the sleep labs. They
I
had
saw
trained
that.
them to do like different things with their eyes to answer questions. And so they were fully, from a physiological standpoint, asleep and communicating from a sleep state to people who were observing them. And so I think that's really interesting. And I there's a interesting community in Europe where one of the things that they've done is they all day long they ask themselves the question, am I awake or am I asleep? To
Mhm.
build the habit of asking the question, so that when they go to sleep, at some point they'll ask themselves that question, because it's sort of like, that's what happens. Your mind is sort of processing what happened during the day when you sleep. And so it sort of turns out that when you ask yourself the question, um, you can wake up, because then your mind says, well, I don't know, am I awake or am I asleep? And then you realize, oh, I am asleep, and then you can lucid dream. So that's interesting. um, but I think that we'll start to use our dreams more. One of the things that I do is I often ask myself a question before I go to sleep, and the number of times when I wake up and you're in that sort of coming out of sleep hypnagogic state,
Mhm.
the answer, will have come to me. It's like your mind works it out. Your brain works it out while you're asleep.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think our mind has so much power and it has all the answers, and it will work for us to find the answers. Often conspire with the universe to give us our answers. So, I mean, and when people ask you, how do you define meditation? What do you say?
Mm.
I mean, it's such a trope again of no thoughts, complete relaxation, but
Hmm. It's actually a very specific thing. Um, yeah, I'm very, let's see, Stan Groff. Yeah, his breath work is amazing. Um, so meditation is a very specific thing, and there's a difference between things that are meditative and actual meditation. Um, and one is not necessarily better than the other. They're just different, sort of like apples are different than oranges.
right,
Um, and um, though they're both sweet, right? But meditation is the mind being the mind being on an object, being taken away from the object or floating away from the object, and the mind being brought back. And so whether that is um, a mantra based, where the mind's brought to a sound, either one that you're making or something that you're doing physically, um, and then the mind drifting away, and then you're bringing the mind back. So it's more like a curl. It's like if it's sort of like a mental bicep curl, and it's the act of the mind moving away and then the mind being brought back. And a lot of times when people are meditating, um, when they have a lot of thoughts, they worry that that means they're not meditating. But
right.
the act of meditation is actually the mind moves away from the object. You notice it, and then it's that act of pulling it back. That's where you
Mm,
get the strength. If your mind was always just clear, then that isn't necessarily meditation. Or if your mind was always busy, that's not meditation. So it's like the top and the bottom of the bicep curl. So it's like, it's actually, if you have thoughts and your mind is really busy, and then you bring your mind back to the object, that is actually where you build the muscle. And then eventually the mind clears, but it clears from a place of strength. Um, and then you have to sort of like work back to, my issue always was I applied my mind too heavily to the object. Um, and then when you do that, you dull the object. I basically meditated like I lived hard,
awesome.
hard
Yeah.
and close to the object.
Yeah, and as some have said, we cannot, as my when I was back in the day when I was a Buddhist, my teacher always said,
Mm.
or the priest always said, look, you will always have thoughts. You cannot be human and always there will always be thoughts. I don't think you have to be in this place without thoughts. That's impossible. So that helped out a lot. So
Yeah.
awesome. And Vance, do you have a question or any questions from the audience for Nicole?
Yeah, there are a couple. Stephanie wanted to know, why have suicides gone up, and Astrox Foundation wanted to know, with the suicides rates going up in Japan, are we going to see the same thing happen in the rest of the countries of the globe?
Um,
Is it a
so
trend?
It is a trend.
hmm, let's see. Um, I actually was going to pull up the article for you. I mean, this was social isolation is, one of the things that they were attributing it to.
Right.
Um, and, I mean, I think that, there was I guess it was maybe in June, the number in the United States, the number of young people who had considered suicide was like 1 in 5
Yeah.
seriously considered it. Um, you know, um, and so so I think it was sort of like there was already a tremendous you could already see the data showing these rises around the world prior to the pandemic. And then the pandemic was definitely stressful for everyone. But then you also saw things like, one of the things that I saw that was really amazing was the amount of, it was a study that looked at the amount of time that fathers had spent with children.
Mhm.
And one of the way that they got to it is the question was like, do you know your children's favorite color? And the reality is that you have to actually talk to your kids to know what their favorite colors are. And so the amount of hours, because everyone's at home. So on one hand, we did see an increase in domestic violence and some other things because everyone's sort of trapped at home.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, you also saw, these really deepening connections, and because we were all at home. And so, the way that I think about it is I think that this time period has really sort of underscored what was broken. Like, we already knew that um, the education system was broken. And, you know, during the pandemic, it really became clear. I had a friend, the number of friends I have whose kids' gym class is in front of the camera is kind of crazy, you know? And so it's like we already knew education was broken. We already knew that healthcare was broken, because of the
Yeah.
the, the cost associated with it. Um, we already knew that it was unequal. We already knew there was a wellness gap and a healthcare gap, and an education gap. Um, we already knew that the world was filled with stress and anxiety. And so it just made it really, really visible in a way that cannot be ignored. And so on the other side, the level of innovation that I see, in education, healthcare, um, and a variety of other things, it's really extraordinary. And people working together that, never would have worked together before, um, is really, really, I think, making a big difference.
Oh, I would agree. I think, as I keep saying on the show, 2020 was the big unveiling. I
Mm.
think, as you said, all these institutions that we kind of suspected were rotting, including our government, sort of expose themselves. But at least by exposing themselves, there is opportunity to do something about it. And what are some ways, beyond, for example, some of the examples you give, meditation, healthcare workers? What are some other ways that technology and health or mental health can help? I know there's one example in the talk, and I thought it was great. You said there was either an app or some sort of technology that when you're in a meeting, it can tell what you're feeling. I
Oh,
was like, man, I would have gotten fired like
no,
my
no,
first
no,
month of
no.
work.
Well, in that particular example, it might have been, one of the areas of technology that we look at are things that sort of help people skill in order to be able to work together better. And
Mhm,
so I think you might have been talking about the case where, um, of where someone who was always talking over other people in the meeting, in all of
mhm,
their meetings, and they would be given this feedback and never quite get it.
mhm,
And so this woman wrote um, this woman wrote um, she wrote an app that did sort of voice recognition, and they were all data scientists. So this was sort of
right,
um, the sea that they swim in, and it actually sort of showed this person um, that he did in fact talk over everyone. And he was a really nice person, but he did in fact talk over everyone. And so that was that was a learning moment really for him, because the thing that technology can do is it can actually, like, give us the feedback that allows us to see. There's a reason why food journals work, because we don't necessarily notice what we eat. I think there's a good question in the chat from Joseph on, isn't technology responsible? I
mhm,
would say, one of the things that I really encourage is that a lot of times when we're talking about the separation that we see in society due to, technology, we're actually specifically talking about attention economy social network. It's a very specific type of technology, because the fact that we're on this show and I can see Miguel and Moondog, though, and everyone can hear me, is because of technology. So this community with Asterox and Stephanie going back and forth and communicating with each other, and Joseph popping in, and sort of like the friendship that it's clear that you all have. Like you know Asterox and Stephanie. The way you've talked about them, you see them regularly on your show. Who knows where they live? Without technology, this community would not exist. You would do it locally, but Stephanie might not find her people, but she can now because of technology. My glasses, I have glasses on. 3,000, 4,000 years ago, this is straight up magic, right? And so my glasses are technology. Our heaters are technology. As it's sort of like, yes, the power grid goes down, but it's a lot better than it's a lot better than bonfires, and agrarian society for large numbers of people. It works a little bit better when you have a smaller population, but I'm not a big fan of culling. So, what we're living in is a world that requires technology. What's important is, are we making the stuff that we really need? And are we putting the constraints in place, that like moving away from um, attention economy technology, which I think is what people, most of the time when you talk to anyone who says technology is the problem, and you ask them to say, okay, what brands, what are you talking about? They mention attention economy products, or if they put up their phone and you say, okay, which apps? The apps are attention economy apps.
What is attention economy?
Sorry. Attention
Ads.
economy.
What?
Attention economy is any business where your attention is what they trade in. So Facebook is an attention economy business.
I just call
And
them data miners. That's what they want, my attention, so I can give them my data, my personal data. I mean,
yeah,
that's the
they're
exchange.
trading your attention for your data, and then they are either selling your data for ads, or they're selling your data for something else. But the currency is your attention.
That makes sense. Yeah. And as you stress, at the end of the day, technology is neutral. It's what we do with it. I mean, if Prometheus brings the fire from the gods, he didn't say it's good or bad. He told the humans, you got to do what you got to do with it. So, but of course, it's hard. I mean, many of our listeners, for example, are followers like me and Vance of Philip K. Dick and Cyberpunk. And as you know from his books and his movies, either technology goes wrong, or the assholes take over technology, and we get Blade Runner and Minority Report and all that good stuff. So
and break out the candy.
and that's actually part of the problem too. One of the things is that art and science are very interconnected. And so there is a reason why the first flip phone looked like a Star Trek communicator. And it's because people saw that. And so, one of the it's definitely important for the arts. Like, the arts should criticize society. They should do that. That's what it's for. It should be a mirror for ourselves. But it is also, one of the things that the arts also do is they help inspire our society. And so, one of the things that, I hope that the artists and the writers and other people begin to do is to write stories where, technology is actually for good. Because if we don't see it, we won't build it. And if we don't build it, then we do get Blade Runner, right? So we have to see it so people can do it. And so, think about, if you think through your life, think about all the times that you saw something in media first, and then it showed up in the world. And so we also have to build these other things. So it's like, Black Mirror was great in its, criticism, but I really would have loved for them, as such great writers and showrunners, to have said, 30% of our content is going to be, people living well with technology, and it really actually supporting them in a good way. Just to, tell both sides, because there's some young computer scientist or some young, digital designer who would have watched that and have thought of something that they'd never thought of before.
Yeah, that's well said. You don't see that much like the days of Isaac Asimov and Star Trek when it was all wonderful, but sometimes it is. I mean, you look at a movie like Prometheus or The Last Alien, and they have these pods where they can heal you immediately. That's a great idea. Or even we're talking about Minority Report. Yeah, we talk about the evil guy and trying to arrest the wrong people, but we forget about Tom Cruise and being able to get surgery for the eyes in a hotel room. So it's there.
Hmm.
What do you think, Vance?
Well, there's such a huge, loud voice of anti technology progression these days. I think it's overwhelmed. It's always overwhelmed science fiction with, like Philip K. Dick, with everything was a post apocalyptic scenario,
Yeah,
right?
the Matrix, Terminator, all the big myths of the 21st
Yeah,
century
it's
have
overwhelming.
thrown, yeah.
And I think because it looks to me like I'm not sure this is true, but it looks to me like humanity is afraid that they can't afford their own technology. It's not a matter of whether it's good or bad. It's a matter of whether or not we can sustain it. We've got the climate change and we've got the asteroids coming, all this other stuff, all these threats. And whether or not they're real or not, but how do we figure that out? Well, the average guy doesn't sit around, has no knowledge directly of it. We watch the media, right? And then we come with what Nicole was saying with the attention, the attention industry, where it is a far more effective thing to scare people into watching than to charm people into watching. Charm, oh yeah, I can take it really bit, but if you scare, wait a minute, what's next? What's coming at me? I have to know. I have to know. So it's a complex thing. I love technology, as you know, but it's not clear to me. Oh, you know what else? Another thought I had. You can't discount drugs as another form of technology because they're manufactured. It's a product of chemistry, which is not electronic technology, but older chemical technology. So you know how that went. That's there's a lot of good with the medical stuff, but then we have the costs and a lot of bad, with people getting addicted and so forth and so on. So those are my thoughts. What do you think, Nicole?
Well, I mean, I think one of the and I'm a little bit probably controversial maybe for your audience on this, but you know, um, I think one of the real problems is actually that um, it isn't necessarily that technology is bad, is that it's not nearly good enough. Like flat screens suck. You know, there's, the us all sitting in front of our Zoom cameras. That sucks. Like the kind of technology I'm
Yeah.
interested in, it's like when people talk about augmented reality, the limits of the imagination tends to be, Facebook on your face or Siri on your face, which I think sounds terrible. What I really want is I want to be able to walk through a forest and hear the mycelial network. I want to go to a concert and have on a sound shirt, which actually sound shirts, you can buy them right now. And I want to feel 100,000 human hearts on my skin while I'm
Oh,
listening to Beyonce
love
or
it.
whomever. Like that's what I want. I want the technology that allows us to be really deeply connected and to experience things that, we can't experience um, on our own. It's like, it should be, technology should empower us. It should enable us. And I think so. I actually don't necessarily think it's bad, though. I think there's quote unquote bad. I think there's lots of bad cases. And it's sort of the reality of figuring it out. I think this is probably dating me, But I don't know if any of you sort of remember the very first, oh, actually, Miguel and Moondog, you will, the very first cell phones. They were huge.
Oh, yeah.
Especially me.
People would be in restaurants talking at the top of their lungs. And then
And
eventually
remember, it was rude to talk with your cell phone in public, and that completely changed.
that's changed. But then also it's like, it's like it takes a minute for culture to catch up. It takes a minute for people to figure out what they want and what they don't want, and for it to catch up. I saw a really interesting study that actually gave me a lot of hope. And it was a colleague of mine at Stanford who had done a study on the 2016 election and fake news. And it turned out that like 80% of the fake news that was forwarded by people over 70. Um, and so
Boomers,
it was like grandma was doing it. Like
Facebook dads, and all.
that's what grandma was doing. But what was really interesting is the young people. And it turns out that, young people, or the teenagers, they check sources 5 times before they believe it.
Wow, that's great to hear.
They have an incredible sort of like, because of this Wild West, they have a really good um, radar for inauthenticity. Um, and they check and validate. They basically show the media maturity, that I think we all wish that adults would. And so, on one hand, you could say, oh, it's terrible that they actually have to verify things in this world. And, certainly that could be a case. But it is also inspiring to see that, that they are so savvy. And I think when we get the tools that will allow people to, set permissions on their data halos. So, I can say this is public, this is always private, and this is paid. If you could go on a trip to New York City and, between your hotel and the restaurant you eat dinner at, back and forth, because, you have said that, you were willing to be paid for this type of data. And by the time you get back to your hotel room, you've paid for the trip to New York. You would think that's pretty cool. And the fact that you could turn it off at will. And so, I kind of believe that when we get the tools that allow for data privacy, sovereignty, and and support data ethics, and then I think especially the young people are going to be using those in very mercenary ways, in the sense of like they're going to be, they're going to be very savvy. And so I think what the attention economy people are getting away with now, they won't be able to.
Well said. And what do you think of cryptocurrency? Do you think this is the future? We better deal with it?
I think digital currencies are very much a part of the future,
Mhm.
as are the digital worlds. But I think the important thing is, I'm often asked by people when they think about VR and and AR and things like that. I'm often asked, like, how does it, or people express a fear that what we'll be able to do digitally will prevent people from wanting to be in the real world. And I say that's really based on what we do. One of the things that really frustrates me with a lot of the way people are relating to technology is there's so much helplessness in it. And what we do with our community is we help people build. We encourage people to build the good stuff. And 25% of our content is around leadership and ethics. So we work with regulators, we work with ethicists, we work with people who are trying to get, like what are the things that we can do to make sure that the technology serves us. So we're definitely doing that, but it's like we have to build the good stuff. And so, the digital worlds will only be more alluring to us if we don't teach people how to live in this one. because as much as I might model the world in a digital environment, I probably won't be modeling microbes. I probably won't be modeling the thing that, that makes, you smell better to me than anyone else. That kind of thing. Human beings, we have a tremendous amount of evolution behind us that makes us want to be together. What we have sucked at is that we don't know how to be together. And there's this thing, I'm about to get controversial again. There's this thing where people have this notion that there was some golden age of human interaction where we were actually good to each other. All you have to do is read history to know that we have never been uniformly good to everyone. Never, 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 never. And it's only been in the last 30 years, for example, that domestic violence was actually a crime, was actually something that was not just how you managed your family. Like that is a recent law. That is recent. And I read a study with the CDC that said that something like 30% of American couples use some form of violence in their relationship. Now, it could be emotional or whatever, but it was like, it was a number that I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so, we don't have this golden age to look back to. But what we can do is we can create the future. And part of that means, skilling humans so that they have the emotional fluidity to be able to make it good when we're together. And if we make it good when we're together, then we'll be able to use the real world for being together, and for all of the things that are deeply touchy, mustily, magically human. We'll use the augmented worlds to, walk through the forest and hear the mycelial network. And we'll use the virtual worlds to defy the laws of physics. And that's really what we should be targeting. And everyone who's all these people who are making all these comments in the comment, batch, I would say you people are also responsible. Like you have to build the good stuff. If you've made any complaint, build something. If you have any issues, do something. Make it good. And you can't point at other people. You have to be a part of the solution if you want it to be any different than it is.
That's beautifully said. Yeah, there's a quote, I forgot who said it, but it goes, "The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something we make and could just as easily make differently." So I think that's what you're trying to say, Nicole. We are in control to an extent. I mean, we do matter. That's what I try to tell. Well, we do matter, but at the same time, like one of my fascinations has always been sort of the big fail in Silicon Valley. Some of my favorite stories are like the Juicero companies and whatnot. I mean, I read that story and that CEO's Medium post, and the psychology fascinate, or Theranos.
Mm.
And in my head, I'm going, well, classicists do say that a villain always thinks they're a hero in their heads, whether it's, what's the name, Elizabeth Holmes or the CEO Juicero, all the stuff that goes in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but what is bringing anxiety and fear in people's head too, Nicole, is the idea of AI and robots taking our jobs. What do you think of that, or how do you deal with those
Mm-hmm.
concerns, which bring a lot of anxiety before the pandemic? I mean,
Absolutely, and I get it. Um, when you look at the numbers on robots taking jobs, they look like big numbers, but it's actually not the important number. The more important number is the number of tasks that are being eaten by software. That's really what it is. It's the task line versus the absolute job line. And so, what that means is that anything wrote gets taken by software. So anything that is a repeatable, something that's like a repeatable action, software is really good at doing, quote unquote, rote tasks. What software is not great at, and what humans are excellent at, is, do either of you play music?
Vance does.
I do.
What
Yeah.
what type of music?
Oh, rock and roll, little jazz type of things. I'm kind of inactive right now, but that's what I play when I play.
Okay,
I
great.
write
So
write some songs too, mostly cover songs though throughout the years.
yeah, and so you know how when you've been playing with other people and there's that sort of spark or that flow or that, that sort of when jazz happens in jazz, that that is what human beings are very, very good at. And
Yeah,
so,
synergy type of thing. Yeah.
yeah, and so the tasks that are left, the tasks that um, software is not doing is human beings creating and solving problems together. And so that is about inspiration and jazz and creating new things. We're so curious. Like that's one of our defining characteristics is our curiosity. We're so curious. And so, for people who are looking at the rise of the software line, the key is really getting really good at working with other people, getting really good at solving problems with other people. Because another word for a team is a family, a community, a country. Like those are teams, a species. And so, you know, it's really the human interaction skills that are going to be timeless. Um, and it's the ability for people to come together and create things and to do that well. So communication, collaboration, all of those are transferable and timeless skills. And a group of humans who are in flow and jazz with one another while they're solving a problem, whether it's like, you know, how to handle something in the neighborhood, or how to handle something in a family, that is where software and robots will not be. You're going to see a lot of software and robots in everything in the middle. So, there'll be, there are, so if you sort of like look at the United States economically, that middle is getting eaten and the software line is going down and up at the same time. And so, anyone who is advising young people today, it really is sort of like develop the transferable people skills that allow you to, in any situation, connect, communicate, collaborate, solve problems. And that's where it's going to be. And then in addition, there's going to be a lot of reskilling. There's a really fascinating program in Australia where what they've done is they've identified skill clusters, and so, if there are several professions that share a skill cluster. Um, and so if you train for one, you are mostly qualified for all of the others within that cluster. But that's a different way of thinking about helping people identify opportunities. That instead of, training for this one particular job or role, excuse me, you actually train for a cluster. And then you have like 11 careers that are available to you. And so it's a different way of thinking about things. Um, but I actually believe that, there will be more things created, um, more opportunities created. Though, there is a painful situation right now, and that is something that we really have to address. So,
And what do you think of AI? Should people be worried about that?
um, do you mean sort of like a sentient AI that wipes us
Yeah,
all out? Are you talking about
exactly. Yeah,
Skynet?
yeah. Going a little into conspiracy, or just how, again, you talk about movies and myths. That's been a myth since the late 20th century, from again, Terminator, The Matrix, Westworld, all these it's obviously a concern as a collective, or somebody just trying to figure out, do you think AI will ever be independent or not self-actualized, but sentient? That would be able to pass the Turing test, if you would.
Mm. So this goes back to, I think this takes us, back to the top of the hour and probably is a good place to sort of balance out. Um, you know, um, well, so first of all, the bulk of AI is not AGI. So AGI is advanced general intelligence, and those are the people who are trying to recreate minds. The bulk of AI is not that. And the bulk of AI is a long way from being anything that even looks like that. And then there's another thing. It's sort of like if, there's a fascinating person named Benjamin Goertzel, who he's the guy who developed Sophia, the robot, the emotional robot. You probably have seen her.
Oh,
Yeah.
Puppet.
And he has a very funny thing that he says. He says, a lot of it has to do about which mind are you recreating? So there's a lot of effort into recreating the human mind. And so if you recreate the human mind, and you are, aggressive, insecure, aggressive and insecure, then, are you attempting to create an AI mind that matches yours while you are aggressive and insecure? That
Star
type
Trek
of
M5. Remember that
that.
old original Star Trek with Dr. Daystrom? Did you ever see that?
You know,
M5. You all great?
yeah.
I am great. You remember that?
And
Miguel,
so,
you didn't see that one?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry, Nicole. Go ahead.
oh, no problem. And then on the other side, it's like, where I guess the big point is like, where are we coming from when we're building these things? And that will, I think, have a lot to do with it. I personally am not worried about an AGI. I think it's probably a good idea if you are building an AGI to not have it connected to the internet. It's something that's like Max.
Go down the tubes immediately.
Max.
Old Ron.
I can't remember his last name right now. He
Headroom.
basically.
Max Headroom.
No. It's he's an AI scientist, but he basically says, within labs, we have basic rules of around like how you treat certain substances. So there's like basic rules in chemistry labs. There's basic rules in biology labs. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And he says there should be basic rules in with AGI. The server that you're running on is not connected to the internet. I think that sounds rational. And I am also not worried about AGI. But I don't think that means that there shouldn't be basic, hygiene rules. So, okay. Well, it was great talking to you.
Awesome. Yeah, it was really good talking to you. For the audience, I'll have it on the show notes where they can find out more about your work, Nicole.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night, Nicole.
Good night. Bye.
Take care, Nicole.
Bye. All right. That was fun. I guess you had to jump off. I guess you and I can take for the audience, you and I can take a few questions. Or what do you think about this, Vance? You're also on the left coast.
Oh, it's so many thoughts come to my mind, especially with AI and the advanced general intelligence. I like that term. It's the first I've heard of it. I don't think they're going on the right track with AI to deliver what they're promising. But I always wonder, well, if we did come up with AI, or let's say the big version, AGI, advanced general intelligence, well, we already have a way of generating that. Two people get together, they love each other, and we get advanced general intelligence 9 months later. Yeah. So if we can't deal with all those coming out, how are we going to deal with the factory assembly line generating these advanced general intelligences? And one of the reasons the industry wants to do that is because they want to control them. They want them to do their bidding and not, be good little employees, only generate what they want, not enjoy themselves. But then, we have the whole thing with science fiction has laid it all out already. I was joking about Star Trek before. That episode was exactly about what happens when this advanced general intelligence replaces, because Captain Kirk was going to be Captain Dunzel. He's going to be useless.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? So, that was the deal. So I don't know. We didn't touch on the spiritual aspects. We didn't delve into because I think that's got to be a part of the mix. You can't just have a secular, logical, nuts and bolts type of society without having something underlying the good spirit between people. Call it what you may, because then that goes across the board. I mean, whatever you do, if you do it with a mind towards exploitation, you're going to get a disaster eventually. So it's a
Yeah,
few
but
thoughts from me.
that's kind of same as it ever was. I think again,
Yeah.
the whole
Well, we did touch on
technology,
that. Right.
fire
No
from the
golden age.
gods, no golden age. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't. It's interesting to try and understand. I mean, there is the fragmenting psychology of humanity. There is the rise of technology. So, I think we're in a precarious place. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said before, I think society is being challenged to survive. With all the technology we developed, we generate problems and we solve problems. And it's like, the wake of problems that we leave behind has to be smaller than the solutions that we're creating in the future.
Mhm.
And that balance is necessary. At least we should keep it even, right? Whether or not we're doing that, it sure looks, the media sure wants us to think we're not doing it. That we have to undo everything, undo technology, no oil, no this, no that. Okay, well, windmills. Oh, they froze. That type of thing. So, but on the other hand, we take for granted what technology has given us. We could never support the billions of people on this planet without technology. So all the people who want to roll back technology, they're not thinking of what happens to the billions of people that won't be able to survive anymore. Distribution, food. We take the technology for granted. There's a good point. We take it for granted, and then we criticize it.
Yeah, and then we want to be Luddites on
Yeah,
on our smartphones, using technology to criticize technology, like socialists using the gifts of capitalism to criticize capitalism. So,
I know it's scary. Well, technology scares people. Funny story. I'm a ham radio operator, and years ago I used to be very active with these little handy talkies that you had before cell phones. We had phone patches and so forth. So I was sitting in a restaurant called Eli McFly's, talking to my buddy. Yeah, it was cool. It had all sorts of neon lights and sort of weird plasma balls in it. It was like a really cool futuristic thing. And there was this extremely well dressed couple, a guy and a gal, sitting a few tables away from me, and they kept on looking at me, and I'm talking on the radio. Well, I think they thought I was a narc, because before you know it, the manager's approaching me. Sir, you'll have to put that away or I'll ask you to leave. Now imagine, sitting at a table by myself, and I'm just talking a normal tone of voice. And these people were so spooked, they called the manager. And looking back on it, I think they were afraid, maybe they were involved in drugs or something, and they thought I was a narc, having them under surveillance. So, the technology is scary to people because it exposes them.
and the context too. I mean, remember the 80s and 90s? What did you have those things that got your phone number? God, I'm already in the remember. Yeah, you got a
Uh,
phone, the beeper or whatever it's called.
oh, the pagers.
Pagers, only drug addicts had pagers. You
Right.
think you're a dope dealer and you get, oh, I better go take some dope. But also in the 90s too, it was just, the rich drug lords had cell phones because they could
Yep.
use them, and then sort of became part of everyday life. I mean,
And now we have burners, right? The
yes,
burner
yeah, that's
phones.
very romantic. I'm gonna get a burner and destroy, get a burner, they'll never trace you or something like that. Yes, yes. These tropes do change, but and I see what you're saying when Nicole's saying, yes, technology, people live longer. Well, they used to live longer. I think our life expectancy has gone down in the last year, at least in the United States, because of
Yeah.
all this. But yeah, we can sustain more people, feed more people at our property. But you also wonder, the mental state of people is probably worse than ever. Addiction rates, even before the pandemic, and Nicole has done talks about this, stress levels, addiction, suicide have been just shooting up the roof. So there has to be a way where we can be physically taken care of, but also spiritually and mentally taken care of. So
Hope so. Yeah.
we have not hit that balance.
Well, look, airplanes have made the global pandemic possible. All this wouldn't have, the virus couldn't have spread without all the technology that we use for transportation, and also the declustering of people. Like everybody's spread out and clustered around the industrial centers and cities. Cities are one of the biggest problems. That's where all the problems congregate, right?
Oh yeah, well, that might change the way people are moving out of the cities, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, they're hollowing out, aren't they?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
all this, like New York and Sea Caucus. I don't know if you know about Sea Caucus. It's the swamps of New Jersey,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and it used to be everything was in New York, but all the different TV studios now and the financial people, they all got out of New York City. It was too expensive, and they moved to Sea Caucus and Hoboken and all these little communities out in New Jersey because it was cheaper. And
Hmm.
so it's like the redwood tree, he comes out and then all of a sudden 100 years later there's a ring of redwood trees around where the original one was.
Hmm. Yeah, I think New York, what, like 500,000 people, young people have lost their jobs. This is New York City,
Yeah.
6,000 small businesses. I mean, that this is much bigger than a 9/11 hit or something like that. So who knows what's
No, the
going on?
pandemic's horrible. It's horrible. And I don't think there's an end in sight, tell you the truth. We're going to need
Really?
technology. Yeah, because there'll be another one, either a mutation or another virus that'll come along eventually. May not be 100 years this time. It'll probably be a lot sooner because we can spread it around a lot quicker. And there's a lot more people in which to, grow it because the viruses grow and mutate inside of us. That's where they do their stuff.
Yeah, well, oh well. Let's worry about this one and then we'll figure out the rest. So,
Yeah, one virus at a time.
any questions from the audience that you see for Vance and I
Uh,
before we wrap up? I can see everybody there.
yeah, I'm looking. I lost track of it while I was jaw jabbering. But yep, they were commenting on what I was saying and what you were saying. Yep.
Awesome. Well, audience, again, thank you for being here. A lot of good stuff coming in March. What am I saying? We will try to get Robert Bonomo back. We will be having shows on Neo-Sethianism, magic. Really, we're working hard to get the director of the documentary A Glitch in the Matrix. Looks like John Lamb Lash is going to come on, but again, a lot of things moving. So March and April looks like to have some really good guests, really good shows, AB Lives, some, as always, some Finding Hermes, and some other surprises I have for you. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. And of course, please support in any way you can. Support all alternative media there and podcasters who give you more choices and a better view, a better angles of what's really going on in this world. I'll have some more announcements like Aeon Byte is going to expand in a couple of platforms that now offer cryptocurrency. So you'll have more choices, especially with the algorithms and tech sensors getting more intense as we move forward in this enlightened age. But yeah, I think that's it, unless you have something to say too, Vance.
Not much, except watch for my new cryptocurrency Moondog coin.
Awesome.
Only kidding. Only kidding.
Oh well, just
Well,
maybe I'll invest your Moondog coin in GameStop, Vance. I promise. I'll put it all in GameStop. So
okay.
but
GameStop. Yep.
yeah, but awesome. Other than that, yeah, you know the drill. Thanks for being here. Please support. I'm offering my voiceover talent if you need it. I don't think there's anything else. There will be an audio version coming out soon. And yeah, please keep fighting the good fight. Please keep being yourself, your authentic self, or at least fight for it. I don't know if there is an authentic self, but I think if we unite all our fragments, we are very, very powerful and very whole. And as Gordon White says, we become invincible. And that is very possible here in the desert of the real. So, well, Vance, thanks as always for being here and keeping me company.
Oh, it's fun. Thanks for providing that opportunity for me, Miguel. And thanks to everybody out in the audience for coming
Yeah.
and sharing this with us.
Yeah, you guys in the chat, great insights, always great questions, and I'm always impressed and I always learn something from you. So thank you very much. And this is the end of AB Live and we'll have in a few days an official audio podcast. So thanks for being here and thanks for being yourself here in the desert of the real.
A real.
Hello and goodbye as always.